Hello, everybody. My name is Sally Buckley. I am the Managing Director of Pragmatic Success. I've been in the infrastructure space for approximately 25 years and have worked all over the world. Our team has decided to honor, celebrate, and thank members of those who have made significant contributions in the transportation infrastructure space. We created a podcast series called Engineering Experts Group. And today I'll be introducing Kim Slaughter. I'm so excited to have Kim join us today. Kim is the CEO, Chief Executive Officer of SYSTRA Engineering. She joined SYSTRA in February of 2021. And before we get started, I'd like to give you a little bit of background about Kim before we bring Kim to us. Kim is the only CEO that is the only woman CEO that's head of transportation at this time. We're very, very excited to have you, Kim. I'd like to share a little bit about your background so that your audience will get a grasp of who you are. Kim has a background in planning, policy development, and project funding, and 30 years in the rail and transit industry. Kim has helped to shape public transportation across the U.S. A transit industry leader and executive, she has worked with public transit agencies and private transportation consulting firms. Prior to joining SYSTRA, Kimberly was a national rail and transit market sector leader at HNTB. And before that, she was a Vice President, Central Region Transit Market Director at HDR. Earlier, she worked for the Metropolitan Transit Authority of Harris County in Houston, where she had several positions, including Senior Vice President and Service Design and Development Associate Vice President of Planning. Kimberly is passionate about, this is a note from the reading. I've spent time researching you, Kim. Kim is a passionate force behind helping to provide safe, reliable, affordable, and convenient public transit to all our communities. And Kim, I just want to say thank you for joining us. And what we're going to do today together is talk about your professional history, however you want to deliver that, your leadership. Perhaps you might want to talk about mentors in your life and perhaps people you've mentored. And then what we'd like to wrap up with is talking about your future at SYSTRA and also, what you see in the future for infrastructure. And before I turn this over to you, I just want your audience to know that you're also a member of the Infrastructure Joint Task Force. And what a time to be joining us with this new $2 trillion budget plan that we have in front of us. So thank you, Kim. I'll stop talking. Take it away.
Hi, thank you, Sally. Thank you so much for that introduction. It is, Guy, when you say all that, it puts it all together. It's not something you think about every day of what you've accomplished over time. And when someone introduces you, you go, wow, is that me or who is that person, right? So thank you very much for allowing me to be here today. Just to start out where you wanted to start is with my history and how do I get to the point where I am now, and I guess why transportation, right? And I will tell you, I've been in like you said, in the transportation industry for over 30 years, and with a particular focus on transit, on public transportation, and that's where my passion started with public transportation and has evolved into mobility, period, right? Moving us from one place to the other and understanding the significance of it. So history, how did I get here? I started out as you said, I'm a planner. I have my master's in community and regional planning from the School of Architecture at the University of Texas at Austin, go Horns. But my undergraduate is in was in pre-law, political science and pre-law, government pre-law. And my path was going to be to law school at the time, right? There was something exciting to me about being a judge. But I don't know that these things really struck my passion. It was more of as people are helping you assess as a teenager, what should you do? You know, people were kind of saying to me, you could be anything you want to be. You know, you have the tools to be anything you want to be. What do you want to be? And here's a lot of great things that, you know, you could be. And I started out as an accounting major in undergraduate school, and I absolutely hated accounting. Now that I will tell you, I showed up every day. It was a 5-day-a-week class at 8 a.m. in the morning, and it was taught by this lovely man who was a professional at Arthur Anderson. And I tell you, he just he I think he allowed me to pass the class because I showed up every day, right? And but those were all part of the discovery of who I am and what I need to know, because to this day I respect our accountants and what they bring to the table, right?
Yes,
and know that I need a really good accountant because I never want to have to do their job. So, but on that journey, it's kind of taking me to my senior year of college, and my minor was in psychology. And literally, it was the last semester of my senior year, and I needed one more credit or, course, 3-hour credit to fulfill my minor in psychology. And I also attended the University of Texas at Austin as an undergraduate student, too. And I took this course on social psychology, and just very quickly, what it studied was how our communities are arranged and what type of impact it has on our mental well-being. And just soak that in for a moment, because we don't think about that, right? We don't truly think about where your house is located, what's surrounding it, and what the mental outcome is. We think of it in terms of convenience, et cetera. But if you really delve into the discussion on quality of life and the choice of quality of life, it goes into the decisions we're making. How many trees are surrounding, whether I don't want trees or do want trees. Do I have access to transportation? Do I have access to good restaurants? Can I walk there? Do I have to drive there? So many decisions. Dry cleaners, daycare, schools, you name it, right? But think about what the professor did was challenge myself and 3 other students with a special project, and took a low-income housing development where in the background, when they walked out the door, they could see the smokestacks of an industrial plant down the street, and said, take this development and how do you make it somewhere you would want to live? What would you need to have in this development in order to make you feel good about staying here, having a good mental outlook? And we just kind of took it and started thinking about, as people who have had access and choice our entire lives, what would you want there, as opposed to somebody who maybe didn't think they had a voice to determine that choices were theirs.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah. And so that really opened a passion for me. Loved it. Loved that special project. I'm thankful to that professor to this day. Don't remember his name, which is really sad. But his explanation and involving me, selecting me for that project, changed my life. And I went back to him because I was actually working as a journalist for the Texas House of Representatives my first year after undergraduate school, because I decided that I was not ready to go to law school. It was the last thing I wanted to do. And so I went back and spoke to that professor, and he told me, here are programs in community and regional planning. This is how people get into this profession. And just how life is, one of the ladies who worked in the journal clerk office with me at the Texas House of Representatives, her daughter was in the industry from an environmental perspective. And she had a conversation with someone that helped me get an internship at a firm that gave me an internship 1 month before I started graduate school. Now, the key here is that that firm, which at the time was called Parsons, Brinkerhoff, Quaid, and Douglas, that firm does not exist today, right?
Right.
Some element of it exists as part of WSP. And that firm, 80% of their work was in transportation. And that exposure is what introduced me to transportation being a key part of the recipe for changing people's lives, right?
Yeah.
And that mobility contributes to our quality of life and our mental well-being. And what at the essence of what I wanted was something, it was a career where I felt like I had the opportunity to change people's lives, that I could leave this world, this space better than when I arrived in it, right?
Yeah.
And you know, that really was my passion. And then when I truly started doing transit, I got into, I also have computer programming in my background. So I started out as a travel demand forecaster and started understanding how routes are developed and of service, public transportation routes are developed, and how you're trying to serve people. What is the accomplishment? How do you attract people? What's really important to people? And then just starting to understand the whole concept that the access to mobility truly allows someone to either choose the life they were born into and know, or to have access to options to learn something different and choose to have a better opportunity.
Amazing.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So that really was the basis of it. And so my evolution has come from, you know, kind of the ground up of developing service to looking at bigger programs and managing projects to managing bigger programs and understanding every element it takes to deliver a program by having worked in every aspect. I've done environmental, I've done financials, I've worked with our design teams, you know, I've done public engagement, I've done grant development, you name it. I've walked construction sites with teams, you know, I've been on every aspect of it. And then I've also in the industry from the policy perspective, finally realizing, so it's not just about delivering the projects, but it's about the policies that guide our ability to deliver and implement those projects as well.
And may I ask you a question?
I'm sorry. Oh, yeah. Go ahead.
So when you talk about policy development, just for your audience, is the policy specific to that community, Kim, or is it? Do you think it's a broader scope around the United States or the world? I'm just curious about when you talk about policy. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's both, but I think the big ones that have really made a difference in transportation are both national and worldwide, right?
Yeah.
So our big ones are really national, and it is so vital, as I've learned over time, that our federal government, our national perspective, sees transportation as a priority, as a top priority, right? And back when the dinosaurs were still alive and I started my career, right? There was always that discussion of us and them, meaning us were transit and them were the highway side. Not, and it was, yes, and it was always the endless battle over financial resources and where those monies should go. Right. What was more important? And just missing the whole conversation that both are important, right? That they are intertwined and need each other and should both be seen as a national priority and invested in from a national perspective and maintained. Right? That's the thing. Don't just help us build them, help us keep them in a state of good repair. So I mean, you see less of that us and them conversation now, which is so wonderful and is truly to the benefit of the public. That as long as we were fighting over who's better, right? The public was losing. And I think it held the U.S. back from a mobility perspective by many years. That's it always fascinates me to go to European cities that have done a great job at it, and they've always looked at us of, why are you guys fighting about this? But you go to those cities and you literally can just move around them very easily, whether your choice is by bus or foot or car or scooter or whatever it may be.
That's right.
And so that's good. So and that brought me to SYSTRA. I feel like my role as CEO of SYSTRA USA has just been the evolution of my career of wanting to go further, to do more, and always try what else can I do to make a difference. And as CEO, I actually get to shape a company. I get to shape the policy within that company, and truly make a difference, do something different.
This is pretty exciting that they chose you, you chose them. It was timing. I mean, it was a perfect timing evolution. If I can interject something for just a little minute, something there's this beautiful story within the story is that I'm thinking about you and your choices. And that one professor that said, go do this. Could you do this project? I've got chills just listening because the project resonates with me as well in that incredibly difficult arena, smokestacks or whatever, right? And you saw something different. And then you were led over to Parsons Brinkerhoff, right? To be introduced to this transportation world. And something that I appreciate you saying, Kim, is talking about the integration of highway and transit. They have to work together. I mean, really,
they have to.
Right? I mean, if I could just share one quick story about myself. I mean, I was on this Dulles Corridor Metro Rail project for 8 years in the first phase of it. And one of the things I was so aware of was the sustainable development, the community engagement. The highways had to be moved. The transit had to come through. Everybody had to buy in. And I don't want to take away from your story, but I live this. And I just have the same amount of passion that you have about where would I be or you be if we didn't have these incredible minds that said yes, I'm going into engineering, or going into labor, whatever we're doing. Anyway, I just wanted to say thank you for grasping that from a broad perspective. So go ahead.
Right. No, I appreciate that. And, and I think it's about not putting barriers around ourselves. I am a true believer. Not sure what your beliefs are, but I believe that God has a plan for every single one of us, right?
Absolutely.
And that's how I have lived my life. When you listen to Him and go with what's put in front of you, go with those opportunities, and stop second guessing Him. I feel like the blessings, opportunities have come and have opened up paths I never could have imagined on my own.
Right.
And I'm sure some people will disagree with me or think that that's poppycock, and that's okay. They get to believe that, but I know what has worked in my life, and I know that when I've tried to really push for something different, what he came up with was always so much greater than what I could have imagined.
What a beautiful story.
Yeah. So, but it is. You make me think of something. I lost my train of thought there. But you were talking. It is about having people not being afraid to use their voices, though, too, Sally.
That's right.
In there. And I think when we are doing these projects, when we are young planners, engineers, architects, and we're trying to help design systems to meet the needs of our various communities, we sometimes don't feel empowered to open our mouths and express what we think is a good idea, what we think isn't a good idea, and being willing to either be wrong, or be corrected, or hear why we're doing something a certain way. But if we feel like something's wrong, like just speaking up and saying, hey, that train we want to put in there, goes right over or bypasses a whole community that could take advantage of it and that really need this service. They need a station, or that's not a good place to put a station because this is what I'm hearing is a critical place within the community. And if we take that away, it starts to change the whole culture of the community. It's about truly not seeing these as benign projects, but being part of the fabric of the community, and you are adding a new element to the fabric of that community. It needs to be woven into that fabric and be seamless and complementary and not something that destroys these communities.
And the community, I know you're familiar with this and you work this, but working with the communities, and listening to them and taking that information back and what is important to them and the taxpayers. I mean, this is tax money that's going into these projects. Something that really resonates beautifully into this story is that you're Frederick Baina, your VP on the West Coast, interviewed on a podcast. And Kim, he talked a lot about this, the integration of the community, working with teams, working with global teams, how to integrate it. And he is a very, very good model of expressing that bigger picture that you're talking about. And I just want to say, hats off to SYSTRA. Seriously. I mean,
I know.
Really.
Yes, and that's what's so attractive about the culture of SYSTRA. And so I have to say this, Sally, because I was working for HNTB when SYSTRA approached me, and many people have come to me and asked me, why did you take the job at SYSTRA, right? Yeah. Because HNTB is a great firm. And what I loved about HNTB were the people and the culture that they are vehemently protecting, because it's about, having that collegial spirit within the company, and having that also go out to their clients as well, right? Yeah. And that whole environment of that collegial spirit, working as one team, resonated with me, and it was a great place to be. So you have to know that this opportunity with SYSTRA had to be so significant to move me to make the choice to leave, right? Yeah. And because HNTB will always be a part of me. They will be a family for me, right? And that's just how well they treated me and how good I felt about it, while I was there. Yeah. And so when SYSTRA had the similar culture, right? And their motto is bold leadership, technical excellence, and connected teams. And they were taking what HNTB does in the U.S. in a world global fashion, right? Yeah. Just to give you perspective, when I joined, I started getting all these congratulatory welcome messages from all around the world. And they were saying, oh my gosh, we're so excited for you to be a part of us. When we saw your resume and we were thinking, wow, how lucky are we to have you as part of our team? Yeah. And I've had every single one of my counterparts around the world to set up meetings with me to talk. They're like, let me know what I can do to help you. Here are the resources I have. Here's the things we've done. Here's, what our specialties are. We're here to help you be successful. How welcoming is that, right?
Yeah. And it's very nourishing and nurturing, and it's perfect. As far as I'm concerned, it's the perfect connectivity, and they want you to succeed,
Yes.
And what else you did? You followed that voice, within.
I did. Right? I did.
Yeah, and it was an opportunity to be a CEO, which is unbelievable. As a woman.
Yes. As a woman, yes. And first CEO, first female CEO in SYSTRA, worldwide, and certainly the first Black female CEO. And in the U.S., we've been trying to figure out. Certainly, I'm the first Black female CEO of a larger firm like this, right? And we were trying to decide if I was the first CEO. Period. Someone mentioned that there was a female president within, I think, I don't know if it was AECOM or a predecessor version of WSP, but then they were saying, but she wasn't really CEO, ultimate CEO, right? She was like president of a division. So, and if we've got to split hairs like that, then I think it probably wasn't there. You know what I mean? So, and it's a shame that that we are sitting here scratching our head in 2021 going, wow, this may be the first time, you know?
It's one of the reasons, not ultimately, I mean, I'm just completely honored to spend this time with you, and I know your audience is going to love it. But it's also a modeling, right? I mean, look at all that you are excited about. I mean, you're really interested in the community and making a difference. And I just want your audience to know that we spent time together before this recording, and you said to me that you would really like to make a difference, a different footprint, expand this. It's kind of a small company that you want to expand into the United States and making a difference. And I think this is going to create excitement. And we talked about engineers, and you said, no, we want to expand this out to every labor force, everybody that wants, artists, who wants to join transportation. You were very clear about expanding the possibilities. Is that what I heard you say?
Yes, no, most definitely. And so let's set the context of the problem, right, or the challenge in front of us. We have a pipeline problem, a workforce pipeline problem in our industry, in the transportation industry. I'm sure that problem exists in other industries, but of course, my window is the transportation industry. Right. And that, just to break it down, just means very simply that we are having difficulty finding professionals to build the next workforce of the future, to fill jobs, entry level and senior level and mid level. We're just having that challenge, right? And we need to fix that problem. And we've been talking about this problem for 20 years and still don't have a great solution to it. But the real solution to it is creating more jobs or creating more individuals that are interested in filling those jobs, right? I mean, that really is the answer to it. And the key is to get people very purposely interested in being in this profession and choosing it early on so that they can focus on this. As most people that you talk to in the transit industry and or transportation, but more so even in transit, is when you talk to them, they say, I stumbled across this. This was not in my intention. It was by accident, and I decided I loved it. And so how do we change that narrative where people are knowledgeable of it, are conscious of the opportunity, and actually choose to be in it, right? And that starts with us working with youth to explain what the opportunities are and how do they go about getting into this pipeline of a career industry. And right now, we do a lot of STEM promotion. And and mostly when we talk about STEM, we talk about people being engineers. And I watch, and I think, yes, do we want more people to be engineers? Certainly we do. Do we want more women to be engineers? Certainly we do. Do we want more people of color to be engineers? Certainly we do. We need them to do that. But I think that we have to remember to not make our conversation so narrow, because I watch when we go out and have these career day, career discussions with kids. And when you start in that conversation of, oh, you can be an engineer and here's how you would be an engineer, you lose 90% of the room, right? You watch the kids glass over, their eyes glass over. And that's not our intention, right? We want to capture 90% of the room. And that is based on understanding that what we need, the positions we need to fill in the transportation industry and what we need to accomplish is not done by only engineers and shouldn't be done by only engineers. And in fact, pretty much anything you're passionate about, you can do in the transportation industry. Like I said to you, if you want to be an artist, you could do that in the transportation industry. What do you think a lot of our marketing people are, and graphic designers and et cetera, right? You know, a computer programmer, you can do it. If you want to be an educator, you can do it. What do you think? Who do you think teaches our training programs or should teach our training programs, right? Develop a curricula. You just think about it very broadly and help people see we need all of that in order to make our transportation industry work. I am not an engineer. Could I have been an engineer? Certainly I could have. Did I want to be an engineer? No, I did not. I purposely chose planning because it aligned with what I wanted to do. And I thought it gave a much broader perspective. And what I did in my graduate program is I actually took some classes from civil engineering. I took some classes from the School of Public Affairs and blended them in my master's program for community and regional planning to develop what I wanted as a professional going into my career, right? And I want, as SYSTRA, to bring more people into the industry. I have the unique opportunity of being a small firm in the U.S. SYSTRA in the U.S. is a small firm. We only have about 153 employees in the U.S. I want to grow our footprint in the U.S., not just the number of people, but the clients that we serve, as well as our geographic locations. That creates more jobs. But I just don't want to go to the same places everyone else recruits. I want to go broader and go out to recruit from more diverse places and expose people to what this profession is and how they can align their passion with this industry.
Sounds great. You know, I'm just so thrilled to hear what you have to say. I've had the honor, I worked at Buckley for 17 years, and I didn't have a plan to go into transportation, but I got the bug and got addicted and spent time sitting at the table, worked on projects all over the world. And it was through MySpace was through human resources and hired thousands of people, all of whom you're talking about is I've touched or listened to or on the phone all over the world with these folks. But I got that bug that you're talking about. But one other thing I think we're kind of moving into our leadership platform. But something I heard on the news last night, which I was very grateful, was Pete Buttigieg was talking about, this $2 trillion budget plan. And he was also speaking to, we don't want all people with college graduate, it doesn't have to be a college grad. So everybody's welcome to jump in. So Kim, that's right. I want to hear about your leadership. You told me the most amazing story. Steve, I think his name was way back when, Steve Beard, I think. Anyway, I don't want to take away from your story, but let's go to leadership because there's a lot of threads here because it all blends together.
Right. And can I just say though, Sally, before we jump into that, part of the key point of that is not just sitting down, doing our jobs every day, and going home. It truly is about working with people and helping them expose them to the opportunities that are in this industry and helping them understand that someone that looks like them can be successful in this industry. That's why I think it's important for me to show myself as a woman, to show myself as a person of color, and encourage others, to explore what opportunities are in front of them. Yeah. So, leadership. It may not be a mystery to you that inherently I'm a type A personality, right?
We know that.
Yeah, kind of came out of the chute that way, right? And if my mom was here to tell you today, it was the most common statement to my poor mother on teacher days, in open house, you go visit with the teacher and teacher evaluation. It's like, oh, Kimberly is a really smart young lady, but she just talks a lot. She's very outgoing, And so, as God would have it, I have two daughters that had the exact same evaluations as I went in. And all I could do was laugh and go, well, I think it is genetic, and that's okay. We'll just teach them to harness it, right?
I love it.
And I will say that the part of that type A personality is about striving for excellence. Over time, I had to learn the difference of when perfection should be achieved and when it shouldn't be achieved. I could naturally, without having gotten married and had kids and had all these other pieces of life that needed to balance out, right? I could have been a workaholic and just have buried myself in my career because I enjoy it and and that's inherently who I am, right? And so I am very thankful for mentors and guidance along the way. And the story you were referring to was I used to work for a gentleman by the name of Steve Beard. He owned his own firm of S.R. Beard and Associates. Some folks may remember that. Steve has since retired, and he and his wife Cheryl lived this incredible life of retirement where they split their time between Phoenix, Arizona, Bend, Oregon, and travel the world and do all these great things together. They just truly enjoy life. And I hope to achieve that at some point, right? And, the thing that was grounding for me, and I go back to this, I will say that I think the thing that made that difference in Steve's life was that he was a deacon, or it probably still is, in his Catholic church, right? And he had also said, the story he would tell is he had been a helicopter pilot in the Vietnam War. And he said at the time that he experienced that he was flying a helicopter and was in a split-second situation where he realized that the man on the ground was aiming the gun at him with the intent to kill him. And he had to make a decision about whether he had to kill the other guy first, right? And that all puts life in perspective of what is important and what isn't important. And for him, bonding with people and making sure that people felt appreciated and seen was very important. And that was a lesson that he passed on to me. And what was interesting about it, is I would go into his office and I would be so focused on an issue, right? And I'd go in there and I was, hey, Steve, can I ask you a quick question? Sure, you can. And he was always just really pretty calm, right? And he goes, sure. And take a seat. I'm like, oh no, I can stand. Here, I just want to, lean over the desk and I want to talk to you about this. And there's this issue. He goes, oh no, please sit down. So I'm like, okay, fine. So I sit down and still, leaning over the desk while sitting and, going and focused on the issue. And I'd ask him a question. He'd say, oh, so how's the family?
Love it.
And, it takes that moment of soberness to go, what? Yeah. What do you,
what are you talking about? That's not an answer
Yeah.
to my question. Yeah, they're fine. They're fine. Yeah, they're great. And I go right back into it. And you go, so what are the kids doing nowadays? He
Oh, I
would
love him.
refuse to answer my question just to get you to slow down and recenter and focus on what's important. Remember to connect with people. Remember that people are important, and that you too are important. You are human and important, right? There have been times along my path, as Steve was one of my mentors, that he advised me against making some moves, taking some opportunities that were put in front of me because he was so concerned about the the impacts that that it may not have been a mentally nurturing environment that I was going to, right?
Yeah.
We'll put it that way. But I think that sometimes you may have to experience those type of opportunities to truly appreciate the nurturing opportunities and to understand how you never want to be. At least that's what it did for me, right? To understand, gave me better information about what I did and did not want to do with my career and how I did and did not want to treat people be treated. And I will always value Steve for that experience he gave me, for the encouragement he gave me. He was a great cheerleader. I can remember one time that we were sitting with a new client that he was introducing me to take over a project that he had been leading for a while. And I know before that he said, he goes, you're going to love them. They're going to love you. They are all strong women. And he says, and I think they're going to be really impressed when they meet you, and da 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 da. And so, I sat down. We're having lunch with the new client, and so I'm telling them, what I do, what my background is, kind of an intro to them. And when I finished, and I thought I had done a good job with, selling myself, right? And when I finished, Steve looked at me and he looked at them and he said, "She's way too modest. Let me tell you what she really does." And he proceeded to talk for like another 15 minutes. And I'm going, is that me? Wow, he sees me that way. And I think sometimes we forget that we don't see ourselves as others see ourselves. And I will tell you, having a cheerleader like that and a mentor was priceless.
Well, something I remember that you told me was that you were pregnant at the time. And so we identified that moment as 17 years ago, correct?
Yes, exactly. That baby turned 17 in March.
So this is really,
I guess
it's
not
a really significant point of view, because whenever I hear of a CEO, president, anybody at that top level who engages directly eye to eye with anybody in the company, I don't care what position they have, I'll tell you what, they have my, it's just something I hold in such high esteem, because it's such a valuable thing. When you drive home at night, you want to say, oh my gosh, Kim Slaughter is the president of our company, and I am just so excited to come back in the morning. It's that humanness, Kim. We can all get our job done. We can do the designs. We can hire the people. We can get everybody engaged. But I'll tell you something. You are leaving a significant message to your audience today of how to treat each other, because we will get the work done, but we want to get it done so that we're working together in harmony and co-creating and respect. And I just can't wait for Steve to hear this. So is there anything else that you want to talk about leadership as it relates to your current role at SYSTRA?
Well, I think too that it is important for leaders to is to be involved in the industry, right? And there's different ways to be involved. There are a lot of organizations to be involved through, but I think selecting how your voice is well served, we have to remember what the entree that the title comes with, right? Excuse me. So I think it makes a difference when we have our CEOs out speaking to our elected officials about policy and priorities for the industry. It makes a difference when we are also communicating and serving on panels to talk about what does it really take to get here to this role? What did I do? What were the challenges I faced, and how did I address those? Right? It's sharing the stories and making space, figuratively paving the way for those to come behind us. Because I don't want to sit in this seat forever, right? And if you look at my resume, you'll say I probably won't stay here more than 5 years. You know, that's not my intention to leave, but I am always thinking in that mode of how do I get this so that it runs like a well-oiled machine? Am I raising those people up, preparing those people to follow in behind me to take over leadership? And what do I need to do next to make a difference?
And
right?
so this is great.
And
so you're not saying I'm going to be here forever. I want to help develop this, right? Create your pipeline and your succession planning. Gorgeous story for people in the business so they can plan for their futures too. I want to be in Kim's chair someday.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Who's motivated by me saying, hey, I plan to be in this role for the next 20 years. So come work for me. And maybe when I die, you can have the job. That's not motivating.
What a great comment. You know? What a great comment. Thank you for that. Right? Yeah.
You're welcome. Just saying, not looking to die in 20 years.
But it's a really exciting, you know, I think succession planning is very key to these development stories. Don't you think?
It's critical. It's critical. And it's not just at the senior level. When I think you should be thinking of succession planning in your first entry-level position, right? Set a goal. I want to learn what I need to know in this job to move to the next level in 3 years, whatever your marker is, right? But understanding that I need to find out what is it about me, what can I give that's a differentiator from everybody else for me to move to that next position, and how am I working on replacing myself? Because I can't leave the position I'm in without, if I want to stay in the same company, right? Without thinking about how do I replace myself, because the need and the function doesn't go away. I just don't want to do it anymore. So nurture your replacement. Put them in there, mentor them. I mean, you know, it's help be part of the recruitment, scout for recruits, show people they can do the job. There are so many things you can do, but I think succession planning is part of your career path from day one.
I think that's a critical thing for these review cycles too. You know, Frederick in the podcast we talked about the review process. The you know, what do you do?
Like performance evaluation.
Yeah, exactly. You know, not just have it at the end of the year, but doing in quarterly, like even to talk about the tough stuff, but at least you care enough to tell the person that they need to improve this area. We love you to death, but you really need to crank it up in this. Do not have a challenge with difficult conversations, right? Because that means you care enough to see that person grow and develop, or go separate ways. Sometimes that happens too. And that's always okay too, because like you said, you're listening to the voice within that says maybe it's a good thing to move on. Getting back to the point on those review cycles, it is the manager's responsibility to make sure that their employees are heard and being seen. And again, I'm just going to go back to a conversation Frederick had, which just had these kind of coffee time, you know, on that in the pandemic space. It's really hard now, but just getting on Zoom and talking about issues, not necessarily about the workday, but about the inclusion of that person's livelihood, if it's a comfort, you know, if it's comfortable. But I think that it means a lot. So I love these ideas, but the manager, go ahead. Sorry.
And No, but that's also about the
Yeah.
culture of the company, right? And helping reinforce that with managers and getting them to understand that that is what is valued and what is seen as their role. Otherwise, that's not always something that's naturally inherent
That's true.
to a person to communicate and to do. So we have to train people and reinforce to them that that is the
That's exactly
expectation.
right.
Yeah. And, you know, there's an extra wrinkle in it for me, right? Coming in as a new CEO, because there was a CEO before me and that person did things a certain way because they had a certain agenda. And my way of doing it and my agenda may be different. And that changes things up, right? Makes people feel like someone moved their cheese to a little bit.
Absolutely.
You remember that book,
That's
right?
right.
Who Moved My Cheese? I love it.
Yep.
Simple book, but so powerful. Such a good message in understanding people dynamics. But you know, so that will be something that I will face because now I'm moving a little bit out of the honeymoon phase, and I'm sure at some point, you know, people will start to say, staff will start to say, oh, well, but the previous CEO did this, you know, it did it this way. And that was and that's great. And I'm sure that worked for him, but that doesn't mean that I have to do it that way or will do it that way. And it's going to be important for me to communicate why, what am I doing? What is my vision? And how we will move
in
ahead.
Communicating. I think communication is critical, right?
Yes.
So, Kim,
Yes.
you know, one of the things we want to talk about in this last little segment here is the future. You've weaved a beautiful story about your professional history, leadership, the criticality. I think your audience is going to love hearing this because you want to pass along some really dynamic ideas that might help others. That's probably one of the reasons why I wanted to do this engineering experts group podcast was to just bring ideas together and pass them on. And maybe something you've said today will be a light up somebody that needs this information. So when you talk about, the future, why don't you just share what you see at SYSTRA? You talked about, being a messenger outside, you're going to help with the task force. Talk a little bit about that, and then we'll be wrapping it up pretty soon.
Yes. So, you know, part of my intent is to, and that growth I spoke about earlier for SYSTRA, is to raise the SYSTRA brand in the USA, to make it more visible, right? Excuse me. SYSTRA is very well known in certain markets and for doing certain pieces of work. I mean, most people that know SYSTRA pretty much think of us as a New York, New Jersey focused firm, and we do systems work, systems design. SYSTRA is so much more than that. We do so much more than that across the world. We are involved in everything from, what we call consultancy, which includes planning and financial planning, environmental work. I mean, service design and scheduling, and in addition to in the innovation space with artificial intelligence and electromobility and architecture and civil design and track and just it's such a broad. We can truly deliver a turnkey project, and it's not just taking you to revenue operations date, but it's beyond, because we also do asset management and we do rolling stock refurbishment. We manage that process, and we do program management, construction management, you name it. There's really not anything that our firm doesn't do. And that is what I want to do, is introduce some of those services in the U.S. Maybe eventually the company goes to offer all those services in the U.S. if that's the right fit. But I would like to expand the services that we offer to our clients in the U.S., providing more competition and providing more opportunities to people in the U.S. to work with a firm where we get to leverage the knowledge and expertise that this firm has built worldwide. Now, SYSTRA, though, is not interested in being this huge company like some of our competitors, like an AECOM. That's not the size we want to go to. I think I'd be really happy if we had 3,000 people in the U.S., right? Or, or 5,000, but maybe probably more like 3,000. To me, that sounds about the right fit. But it's about providing that excellence to our clients and truly focus on being excellent in it, not just doing it. It's not just a numbers thing, but it's about being different, that we are seen as the experts in whatever it is we're doing.
Totally. It's very exciting too. And it takes, like you talked about, the types of people that you want to bring in, subject matter experts in their fields that have done these projects before. Plus, the thing about SYSTRA is you have this global footprint, obviously, and you can integrate the incredible technology and the new ways of doing things from Asia and Europe, and help with some of these projects in the US. I mean, it's just a very exciting future that I see in front of you, and I'm just thrilled. One of the things that you said before we wrapped up our pre-interview together, you said there were 3 things that were important to you. Could you share with the audience? Do you remember what that was?
Oh yeah, faith, family, and firm. That is, and that is something that another now really good friend, who I consider to be a good friend and colleague, who was my boss at HNTB, Doug Mann. That was something that he would say to me, where I kind of got the coined that phrase from, and that was what he said our priorities ought to be, right? And how he saw it and how we functioned at HNTB was our priorities ought to be faith, family, and firm. And that just resonated with me. And I think it's what made Doug and I click so well as colleagues, right? And because for me, that was my priority too. And I'll tell you very quickly, I didn't tell you the story before. He said that to me after my husband had 2 strokes back in 2018. And I just started working for HNTB, and I was going, oh my gosh, how can all these things happen at once? I don't want to lose this new job, but my husband needs me to take care of him, and Doug said to me, our priorities are faith, family, and then firm. So he said, so we're way at the bottom of the list. You go and take care of your husband, do what you need to do, and we will be right here. Your job will be right here. So don't worry about this. And that was very freeing to me as an employee, to know that weight was off of me, that I could get my family righted. And still have the means of
I love that
employment.
story. I would love to mirror something that happened to me as well. I was working on the Korean high-speed rail years and years ago, and I was going through a challenging, difficult situation. And I went up to this man and I said, I can't manage this. I cannot do this. It's too much. $17 billion project. How are we going to, and the man said to me, I want you, because I was going through this, and he said, I think it would be perfect for you to stay here and work this, to keep busy. You know that I have your back, and I will always be here for you, and you will get this done, and you will be successful, and you'll be able to manage what you've got going on. And you know what, Kim? I went, I've got chills telling you this. I went to him a year later, and I said, went to his office, and I said, I don't know if you remember this, but you helped me to keep going. And that to me is all about what you talked about with Steve and your gentleman from HNTB.
Yes.
Doug.
With Doug, Doug Mann.
The inclusion.
Good guy.
So we're actually almost out of time, and I just wanted to extend my thanks and appreciation. I want this podcast to go out around the world. I really do. This is my intention. It'll be on YouTube. We've got about 5 or 6 different platforms that'll be on, and it's just, what a great role model you are. And I really mean that sincerely. When I talked to you before and talking to you now, I just kind of get chills thinking that, we can kind of relax. You can relax in the space knowing that you have that A-type personality and you are a driver, but you also have a heart. and you see the
Yes.
big picture in many different ways, through the infrastructure, through the projects, through the people, and also embracing people that are in different walks of life that might want to step into this infrastructure space.
Yes.
And be a part of it, but never thought they could.
That's
Because,
right.
oh no, I don't have the degree.
We don't all have to be the same in order to work together and get
That's right.
and achieve
Anything you want to
mission.
say anything you want to say to your audience before we say goodbye?
I am so encouraged by how we all came through the pandemic over this last year. I think it allowed us to all recognize that our humanness is what's the most valuable part of who we are. I've been spending my first months with SYSTRA meeting with every one of our employees, right? I want to connect personally with every one of our employees. And the overwhelming thing that people miss is collaborating with in person or connecting with in person their fellow employees. And that says to me inherently, we all miss that the human interaction. Let us not get back to normal and forget that we are all human and we should all be valued.
Well, thank you very much. I can't wait to get this out to the world. So I really appreciate your time. Thank you, Kim.